All right, here we go into this is strand 8, standard 5. So this cross stitch that starts out this PowerPoint is dedicated to this quarantine. Not a fan. Definitely not a homebody. I hate being home all the time. I hope you're doing well. Let me know if you're having issues with content. And I'm going to say this for, I think, the 5001 5001st time that you can find the content for the day in the announcement section on Canvas. Man, I love you guys, and I love saying that 5001 times. So yeah, announcements on Canvas, honeys. That's where it is. I hope that was loud and it bugged you, because there's so many emails that I keep. Where do I find it? Okay. We're wrapping up our criminal mind unit today. And today we're just going to do standard 5 in that curriculum, which is lined up here. So we're going to have to, these are the objectives essentially that come from our curriculum. So this is verbatim what strand 8 standard 5 is. So the objective of the day is to explore psychological aspects of serial killers and mass murderers. We'll also try to classify them as much as possible. Some pretty interesting stuff coming up. Okay, so what I did here is I give you a definition. This is the exact definition of a serial killer, and I've included 3 examples so we can kind of explore, does this fit these different killers? So we recognize probably all 3 of them at this point, at least this dude and that dude, right? So Jeffrey Dahmer and Ted Bundy. And then I've never seen the movie Monster, but that middle one is based on is the one they based the movie Monster on. So Jeffrey Dahmer is going to start us off. He's on the left. Sometimes he's called the Milwaukee Cannibal or the Milwaukee Monster. He committed the murder and dismemberment of 17 men and boys from 1978 to 1991. So it fits the exact definition. 3+ people that were killed over a month. And yeah, so he did 17 over the course of years. Next up is Eileen Wuornos. I don't even care if I botch their names, because I don't care that you remember him. She was an American serial killer. She was a prostitute that the movie Monster was based on, and she murdered 7 men in Florida in 1989 and 1990 by shooting them at point blank range. Her story is actually pretty tragic, and yeah, if you've read anything about her, not that anyone should be like dismissed or whatever because they killed people, but like there were incidences of rape, and she was abused throughout her life. It was pretty gnarly life that she led. So fits the definition though again. So here we have 7 guys. We need at least 3, and it was almost exactly a year that she killed those 7 guys. So fits the definition. Next one, Vikings favorite, because hey, we know someone who knows someone who knows someone who went to Viewmont when he was around. So he was a serial killer who kidnapped, he raped, murdered women and girls between I wanted to look at the dates, 1974 and 1978 that we know of. So we can say like the 70s, because there are accounts that say this probably has happened earlier than what we think. So after more than a decade of denials, before he died in 1989, he confessed to 30 homicides that he committed in 7 states. In Utah, claim to fame. Between 1974 and 1978. True number, though, we don't know it. He probably killed more than that. Scary. Okay. From this, we can see common characteristics serial killers have, with some statistics thrown in. So 65% of them love fires. They're kind of pyromaniacs. So my little nephew that loved to stir the fire, scare me. 60% are like peeping toms. They're into voyeurism. More than 70% torture animals. More than half have attempted suicide. Over half have pretty decent IQs. So in this one it said, I can't remember exactly what it said, decent IQs. Over half have IQs in the bright to very bright range. I don't know exactly what numbers are associated with bright and very bright, but decent IQs. More than 70% were abused. More than 60%, this is an interesting fact, more than 60% were bedwetters after the age of 12. So I don't know how that plays in. They can point to psychological and substance abuse in more than half of the families that they came from. And over half are single white males. More than 75% of serial killers come from religious and politically conservative families. So those are kind of some statistics that we know about. So clearly it doesn't cover every serial killer, but those are some of the stats that are out there. I looked into some different things. So back in the 1900s, so this is giving us some gender data, women were maybe more mad. I don't know. Because if you look at men versus women serial killers in 1900, women were killing like 13 people, 13. And then in 2010, it came down to 7. So, I mean, maybe in the 1900s, women were mad. I mean, all we could do is make sandwiches, probably clean the house. It's probably life like today. It's probably like this. Maybe if we're pressed enough. Jokes. Okay, women seem to have mostly chilled over time, while the guys, man, you guys need to talk about your feelings. Peaked in the 80s. So if you listen to My Favorite Murder podcast, which asterisk, lots of swearing, definitely inappropriate jokes. Don't listen to it if you're not allowed, for sure. I cannot recommend, and yet if your parents are fine with it, I would recommend. It's a great podcast. They talk a lot about how 80s kids were unsupervised, and having lived back then, I can tell you, like, my parents never, they were like, where are they? I don't even know if they cared where we were, but they didn't. So it was the best childhood, if you think about it, because 7 years of my childhood was spent in Juneau, Alaska, and in the summertime, the days stayed day for a long time. It just seemed like it stayed light pretty long. Not like when you go farther north, because you're closer to Seattle and Juneau, but it stays light for so long that I remember in the summer my mom would be like, oh my gosh, it's 9:30, where are the kids? And then she'd call us out and be like, come inside, time for bed. So it was seriously the bomb childhood. If you could have grown up in the 80s, we might have been more at risk for serial killers, but I don't care how dangerous it was. It was a good childhood. Boys can hug now, though. So if you look at the data, it looks like they sort of peaked. The men peaked around the 80s, and then they're starting to chill out. So maybe we're hugging now, talking about feelings. I don't know. Okay, race data is here. White people were the most mad in 1900. If you look at the data, 1900 was probably a garbage year. I'm thinking kind of like 2020 is a garbage year. But this is serial killer data, remember. There are other murders that happen all the time, but speaking specifically of the definition of basically 3 or more victims over more than a month, this is what we're talking about. So how old are they? Murdering is more popular among young people. So frontal lobe issues, probably. Frontal lobe deficiency, perhaps. There is some data. They used to think like frontal lobe was totally formed by age like 21 is what they kind of thought. And you probably have some variation from individual to individual, but there's also data supporting like people don't actually have their frontal lobes all together until they're around like 30. So this would kind of make sense if you look at largest percentage of murders happening in the 20s. So 20 to 29, that's 27% of them. 10 to 19, that age group comes in second, and 30 to 39 is third. So maybe serial killer game is more of a young person's game, I guess. Okay, and should we be scared? So a lot of times we talk about scary content. We talk about nefarious acts that hopefully never, ever, ever happen again in our world. But I wanted to kind of give you some data. This has nothing to do with our content other than I've thought about it, and I've been like kind of scared that there are people out there like this that could do these acts. But this is giving you serial killer victims per 10 million. I think we're at like 30 million population now, but per 10 million, you get this many victims per 10 million. So like around 15 at the top per 10 million. So, I mean, this is really a rare occurrence. So, but also remember in class when we were talking about like, don't walk like an idiot. Remember when we were like, we read the article that says how not to get killed. And they were like, just walk normal. Don't walk like Shaggy on Scooby-Doo and flip your feet out and, swing your arms opposite the legs. Okay. If you're swinging them together, man, I don't know. Good luck out there. Okay. Next definition is mass murderer. So that Vegas dude must have been a real piece of work because every picture of him looks like he's stupid drunk. Like stupid drunk. Every picture I've seen has been like he's out of it. So this is the definition listed. 4 or more people with no cooling off period. So I have 3 examples here. Starting, let's go ahead and go to the Vegas shooting because that's the worst one we've had in our history. So Stephen Paddock was a mass murderer responsible for the 2017 Vegas shooting, if you remember, at that concert. He opened fire into a crowd of about 22,000 people. So kind of easy targets if you think about how many people were there. They were attending a country music festival, and he fired into the crowd, and he killed 58 people, and he actually injured 869, and there were in the end 59 fatalities. He was one of them. So that's maybe the only good thing that came out of that situation is that at least that dude's dead. So that was Vegas. Fits the definition. He killed 58 with no cooling off. He killed all of them right then. Okay, next, the clown on the top right. His name is James Holmes. He killed 12 people and injured 70. This was the one that was in the Colorado theater. So that was Aurora, Colorado, July of 2012. There was no cooling off period. 12 people dead. So fits the mass murderer definition. And finally, I wanted to include one that is, these are all kind of close to home because we've got Vegas that's within a drive, and we've got Colorado within a drive, and then the dude at the bottom, and I have no idea how to say his name, but it's like Sulejman Tolevic. Don't care. He was the one who went to Trolley Square. I don't know if you guys even remember this, but I want to give you the date. No, I don't have the date, but he was the butt munch that killed 5 people and wounded 4 in Trolley Square that one day. Unfortunately, there was a guy with concealed carry. I think he was an off-duty officer, took him out. So I just wanted to make sure that you had seen examples that are sort of close to home, but also that fit the definition. So mass murderer, yes, we have 58 plus 12 plus 5. That's what these guys meant. So all mass murderers. Okay, so this is just a graphic came from CNN, and they were just trying to compare the first 5 states that have or the first 5 states, 5 countries. The United States is a country that have the highest mass shootings. So these are the top 5, and you can see USA. We're tops when it comes to mass shootings, aren't we? So why do you think that is? Like, I kind of wonder what your thoughts are on that. I probably will ask you in the questionnaire. When I was a kid and went to school, we did not have shooter drills. And I think it's a tragedy that we have them now. Why do you think it is that we have so many mass shootings? It's a terrible, terrible thing to have to think about. Okay, so here are some mass shooting incidents. So this is from economist.com. It shows data about mass shootings in the US from 82 to 2016. The red are highlighted the 10 deadliest in that time frame. So we didn't have, in this one you can see, in the next one you'll be able to see the Vegas shooting again. But up to this point, the deadliest was Orlando, Florida in June of 2016. So then we go to this next chart, and Vegas won. So we had the Orlando nightclub comes in second now after that 2017 mass shooting. So pretty horrific data really to see. Like, no one should die innocent for no reason. Okay, psycho group picture. Jeez. Okay, so who kills and why do they kill? We've pretty much answered the who. Remember the characteristics are used in profiling. So we've answered some of those questions, like you've seen them in the statistics prior to this slide. So one of the factors we've talked about, for example, is, are they organized or disorganized? And they tend to typecast the serial killers based on the way they leave their crime scenes. So if they classify the crime scene as organized, they assume that the person has the characteristics on the left. If the person had a disorganized crime scene, then they start to go, oh, it's probably this kind of person. So, and we also needed to know, like, what is their mission, or what demon is telling you to do stuff, or what is your sadistic behavior? Like, what is it? Where does that come from? So we're gonna end this PowerPoint. I have sources on the next one that we'll just end on, but there are types of serial killers, and here again, lastly, are the types of serial killers. In the chart on your assignment, I'm gonna actually have you find an example of each of these, and I'll include the information for that, the details in that after the fact. So reach out to me if you need me, and I will see you next time.